Okay, it's 5:04. We are going to start the webinar. As Courtney said, you can leave any of your questions on the Q&A. And we will try to answer all your questions at the end or during, if I'm able to see the Q&A while we're making the presentation. You should be able already to see my screen. What you're seeing is a WordEscape Red overview over the architecture. Today's webinar is about making a data vault in Databricks with streaming tables. We will see, let's say how to make a general data vault with WordEscape, and then the particularities of making it on Databricks and on streaming tables. Then we will see how those streaming tables work, and how we can generate all that code and how that code will translate into Databricks. During the demo, we will see how to discover our sources with a discovery method, how to profile them, and how to keep track of our changes on our sources. We will see very briefly how to make a data vault model with 3D, and then we will see how that model is deployed on WordEscape Red and how WordEscape Red can generate all the necessary code to, in this case, generate notebooks on Databricks. I will go through the modeling part maybe a little bit faster than usual, so we can look more in detail about how those notebooks are generated, because today's webinar is more about Databricks and about streaming than about the modeling side of data vault. However, if you have any questions on the modeling, it's perfectly fine to ask them, and we will cover them with the Q&A as well. So if you're familiar with WordEscape, or if you're not, you may know that we have two tools. What you're seeing on the screen is WordEscape Red, which is our builder tool, which means that it is a tool that will generate all the DDL, all the DML code, and will perform all the day-to-day operations on your data warehouse. And our other tool is WordEscape 3D, which is our modeling tool, which means that it is the tool that we will use to generate models today like Data Vault, but it could be something like a data lake or a 3NF or any other modeling that you would like to make with 3D. 3D works by gathering the metadata and transforming that metadata into models with something we call model conversion rules. Both products are work based on metadata with Postgres repositories, and they will generate any documentation you need to document your warehouse. WordEscape Red comes with a scheduler called Azkaban, which is an open source scheduler developed by LinkedIn. We will see a little bit how that scheduler works. But again, because today's webinar is more about streaming tables, we will see how we can create pipelines in Databricks and how those pipelines can run continuously and load continuously our files as long as they, or as soon as they land on our, in this case, ADLS file system. I'm going to jump directly into 3D. Again, this is 3D, our modeling tool. The first thing that we have to do is define a connection. A connection can be anything that has an ODBC or a JDBC, or something like an API, flat files. All those things can be configured as a connection. If I click on my properties, you can see here that I have configured a JDBC connection to an Azure SQL Server database, but again, it could be any other of those sources that I have just described. When we discover the connection, we run a series of queries called discovery method or discovery methods. And these are a series of SQL queries that will query our system tables and will bring back from our database the metadata in terms of things like table names, attribute types. If something is a primary key, is this yellow key that you're seeing here. A foreign key is a blue key. We have relationships, which are these arrows as well. If we have things like indexes or transformations, this will also be discovered by the discovery method. The discovery method is a series of SQL queries that can be customized by the user if necessary. And you will always see which are the queries that you are running against your database. All the queries that WordEscape runs are open to the user, and they're all transparent to the user. There's no black box, there's no hidden queries against your sources or your targets. Regarding the profiling, once we run the profile, we can see the profiling result, and this will have a series of metrics that can help us spot things like data quality issues or maybe empty attributes. See here, we can see our region is not very well populated, and we can use these metrics to use the model conversion rules to flag those attributes for my developers. I can also create my own metrics, and of course I can change these queries as well. If I want to keep track of how my source changes, we have this wizard here that will allow us to compare models and will output the changes. In this case, between these two models, somebody has deleted these two attributes and has added these two attributes. We can run this comparison or a new discovery every week or every month, and then we can have this report and we can share this report with our developers so they can be sure to take care of any attributes that have been added or deleted from our sources. If we want to create a data vault, we have this category here called data vault design. I'm going to add a new version with today's date. And the basic process to generate a data vault is to bring one of my source tables as an example, and then flag the attributes of these tables depending on which objects I want to generate or where I want those attributes to end up into. So for example, if my customer ID is a business key, I would expect to create a hub. And if I flag, for example, 3 of my attributes for a satellite low volatility and the rest for a satellite medium volatility. Actually, I'm going to set this one to a higher volatility because I think these attributes could potentially change more. And if I click on apply, now you can see that my attributes have changed in terms of color, and this signifies that my attributes have been flagged as data vault attributes or in my data vault design. Once I have flagged my attributes, I can click on generate data vault. I'm going to give it the same version name with the date. And now based on something we call model conversion rules, which are basically rules that will change the metadata and my input from my source to my data vault. Now there's a series of options, which are basically things like prefixes, suffixes, and other options. I just left the defaults for the demo. And now I have generated this attribute, this data vault entities. A hub with my business key and the 3 technical columns that have been added by the model conversion rules, including the hash key hub customers, which is the hash of the business key, and 2 satellites based on the flags that I set on the attributes. So I set one on a medium rate of change, these attributes, and these attributes on the high rate of change. The model conversion rules have also added to the satellite the hash key hub customers, which is the foreign key and the primary key on these tables, and the necessary technical columns to keep history in the satellites. By default, the rules will generate a 2.0 compliant data vault, but you can always change let's say the flavor of Data Vault or how the rules are implemented. The rules are very easy to change, and everybody makes small changes to change, I don't know, attribute types or maybe table names, or address any metadata glitches that you can find on your sources. To this point, we didn't talk about targets or databases, and this is because 3D is database agnostic. That means that only on the last step, we will indicate to 3D which will be our target database. Today, it will be Databricks, but it could have been any of the other supported targets like Synapse, Fabric, MySQL, Oracle, of course, SQL Server, any of those, and any of the, I'm going to say, popular databases. On the last step, we will tell 3D we are going to deport it into, or to deploy it into Databricks. And on that last step, things like the data types will be changed, and any transformations that are necessary will be added. Once that is done, if we click on export to Red, 3D will generate an XML document that will contain all the necessary metadata that contains the model. Only the model itself. We have not created any physical tables yet. That will be done by Red. So that XML document is the input for Red, and now we are going to jump directly into Red. And if we go back to Red, we go to our builder. This Data Vault is this same model that we were actually looking at on the previous 3D. Okay, so this is actually the customer table, and this is my customer hub, and the rest of the model is simply a more complete model that we used to deploy. We did not flag this complete model just in the interest of time, but it is based on the same source. And actually, you can see here, these were our first 3 tables. We just deployed a larger model, but it only contains hubs, links, and satellites. We're only talking about the raw model at this point. I'm going to go back to Red. Once we deploy that model, that XML model contains all the metadata for my tables. So again, things like my table names, attribute types, all will be deployed. Once we deploy the metadata based on templates, Red will actually generate code that will contain, in this case, it's a Python script that contains a SQL notebook. This is my notebook, and my notebook in this case will create a streaming table. Okay. If I run one of my notebooks, once they are generated, and I click on load, this will run the script and load the notebook into my Databricks environment. If I go now to my Databricks environment, you can see that in my workspace, I have uploaded all my necessary notebooks. This is basically by, I'm going to generate it again. So we have a new script. And now that I have generated the script, if we look at the script, we will see on these comments that we have this timestamp, which of course it's right now. And if I load it again, this will upload the latest version of my regenerated notebook into my Databricks environment. Okay, so I'm going to go and find it now. This was load employees. We can see all the output here. And if I go now to my load employees, Northwind, we will see this same timestamp, which is what I was trying to show you, just to make sure we understand how that is uploaded. The template has generated this small comment box, which we could run, but it will not do anything because it's only the comments for metadata purposes. And then the template has generated this streaming table notebook, In this case, only based on CQL, but we can also generate Python notebooks as well. And it has generated all this code, which is pointing to a flat file. And in this case, it has a complete specified map for my schema. Okay, this has been generated based on templates for all my load tables, which are one-to-one copy of my sources, my stage tables, which is where we will generate the hashes. Here you can see how we generate the hashes as well. And for my hubs, my links and my satellites. So for example, for one of my hubs as well. Once my notebooks are uploaded, I have generated a small pipeline for the demo. This can also be scheduled from Red itself, and it includes my load categories, my stage category, and my hub category. I'm going to start running it. And this will basically pick up those 3 notebooks and keep running them continuously based on my settings. In this case, they're very simple settings. And the pipeline will keep running as long as we do not stop it, because it is a continuously run pipeline. In this case, we have 3 streaming tables, but we could have things like delta live tables, which are now called materialized tables, can also be generated. Okay, this should be picked up in a few seconds, and I will show you where this is being sourced right now. And this pipeline is currently being sourced on my load table, and my load table is pointing to ADLS file system, and my ADLS file system has the following file. Which is a very simple flat file. And this will be the data that we are expecting to see loaded, let's say, by our streaming pipeline. Okay, while this is being loading, I will show you the rest of the demo in terms of the capabilities of Red. Red also has the ability to create jobs. And let's see where this is. To build jobs. These jobs will take care of all my dependencies and schedule a job on my Azkaban scheduler. My Azkaban scheduler here, sorry. The Azkaban scheduler is this scheduler developed by LinkedIn. It has this dashboard, and it will take care of all the dependencies sent by Red, and you can run this on a Windows machine, or maybe on a Docker container, or on a Linux machine. That's a little bit up to you. It comes with the product, so you don't have to worry about, let's say, getting an extra scheduler. However, if you want to schedule things with another scheduler, like Airflow, or maybe a data factory, or how we're doing it now with a Databricks pipeline, that is also possible. You do not have to run this scheduler if you don't need it, or if you don't want to. You can always run it a different way. Android can also generate applications. The applications will actually pick up, in this case, all my objects from my data vault and push it to the next environment. The environment that you're seeing here would be my dev environment, which would be, let's say, my more my first environment. From here, I would push it to UAT, for example, and then I would push it to production, if those are my 3 environments. The application will contain, just like the 3D XML file, it will contain all the metadata from my model, and that will be pushed onto my next repository, which will be a similar environment to what you're seeing here, but it will be hosted on a different database for Postgres. And finally, on the reporting side, Red can generate all the documentation necessary to document my data warehouse. this will basically pick up all the metadata from my load tables, my stage tables, of all my objects, and it will show us from our column names, business rules, comments, lineage, even the scripts. You can actually see them here as well. I believe the scripts are somewhere maybe below here as well. And it is a very easy thing to do to share the warehouse or the structure of the warehouse with our other colleagues, or maybe with people from the business if we don't want to give them access to the rest of the warehouse. Okay, apparently we are still waiting for this to allocate resources. Maybe it's a little bit slow, but I will explain how the pipeline works. Hopefully it will come up a little bit faster. Okay, so the pipeline will basically push the information from the files into the different tables. So the file will be read and the information will be pushed onto my first table, and then automatically it will be pushed onto my stage and onto my hub. So it will be pushed through the whole lineage, as long as the whole lineage is included on the pipeline. If the lineage is split on different pipelines, which is also possible, then it may be a little bit slower. It may not be as fast, but it will also be pushed through the whole lineage. Okay, the idea is that once the pipeline is running, we can actually land a new file on our file system, and then the new file will be pushed. So I would upload a new file, for example, this one, and then the new file will be uploaded. If I want to make changes to one of my pipelines, for example, on my hub, I'm not sure if it was hub category or hub customer, the one that was working. So for example, if I want to run a transformation, I can include the transformation on this box. And if I generate the code again, my pipeline will be updated on my code. Okay, after this, I would load it again. And now when this is executed, we will see the output. Again, with that small change that we have done. And we should see that change on our Databricks workspace. Okay, we have some questions there. Let me see. What version of the software I'm running? I'm running 10.4, but this solution will work. I think 10.3 already has the workflow button. And if the pipeline is still running, no, the pipeline did stop running, but I'm going to run it again. Let's see if it runs now. I'm not sure why we had that small error. I'm not sure if it had a resource error, but let's try to run it again. It's particularly slow was that first time. I'm not sure if it was coming up or. But if I go back to my, see now it is actually running. I want to show you that change that we made on the notebook. If I go back to that same notebook, which was hub customer, I think it was hub customer or hub category, hub category. we can see this small change that we actually made, and that we made that change just a few minutes ago. If we go back to our pipeline, now all our pipeline is green, I believe. And now it is running from load, stage, and category, and it is continuously running. Okay, I'm going to go back to red to see if actually this is actually working, or if our demo is. I'm displaying my data now, and now we can see that we have, okay, I'm going to order the IDs, and now it's important to pay attention to, okay, we have loaded everything at once because I did add those two files, but I'm going to show you now how this works. Now that it's working, that the pipeline decided to come up. On the first one, we can see the original category IDs and category names. And on the second one, I added, I'm going to say for the demo purposes, a 99 with word escape, and that says food for my warehouse on my category descriptions, because they were all food and things like that. Okay. We can see that now that the pipeline has started, this has been propagated from my load to my stage. Okay, again, the same category names with my hashes, and now to my hubs. Okay, so, and in the case of the hub, we can see this upper. Now it has made these category names uppercase. Okay, the idea behind this streaming concept is that if I change a second file, for example, this one, which is called categories 2, I'm going to change it with a notepad. And I'm not sure if you can see here, but it says 100 demo food for my demo. Maybe we can add another one that says, I don't know, 101. Maybe 101. And this can say demo pipeline. And this can say food for my stream. I'm going to save it. And what the streaming concept will do is once I upload this third file, okay, to my file system, this could be something like an API or a streaming Kafka topic. It could be any of your sources. As soon as this file is landed, the pipeline will pick it up and will process it. As long as the pipeline is running, this is a continuous pipeline, but we can also choose to run it every hour, maybe every day. It will process both streaming and both batch processes. So it's a very flexible and useful concept that can allow us to process things real time up till batch in any combination of such. Okay, I already know that this is probably already working, and now we should see those extra records without me having to run anything else. Okay, as soon as something is landed, we will see this demo food, this demo pipeline, anything that is landed will be propagated through the whole lineage. And that is what the streaming idea does and how it works. This is relatively new. Some of these features are still on public preview, but you can already see that they already work very well. And it can enable you to process a lot of data very fast and very flexibly. Let me see which are the other questions. Do you have a demo of this against Microsoft Fabric? Fabric doesn't have this concept of data life tables. It has other solutions like Data Factory and so on. But yes, we do have an enablement pack for Data Factory, and Data Factory can process based on events on a similar way, just that the technology is slightly different. What kind of performance are you looking with 260 columns and 350 million record table. That will depend on how big your cluster is. So if I look at my workspace, I can actually choose what kind of cluster I want on my compute. And on my pipeline, I can also choose on my settings how much power I want to give to this pipeline in itself. Okay, what I can do is I can give it a minimum and a maximum. I can play around with those numbers until I process what I'm looking for in a given time. If I want to make that in 1 hour, I would push those numbers around until I get 1 hour. And that way I can be sure to meet my needs. What is the need for a hub? So the hub will actually store my business keys. If we go back to red, my hubs will store things like my category names, my customer keys, my employee keys. Okay, my business keys will be stored on my hubs. My relationships between my entities will be stored in my links, and my history will be kept on my satellites. Okay, these are the ones that are actually being populated right now because they are the ones that are included on the pipeline. And you can see that these same records will be loaded into my catalog. So my catalog is my demo catalog. We added everything on our data vault level. And our table in this case is hub category. Okay. If we now look at our records here, we can see that the records have been added. Okay. And you can see that this load dates are slightly different. These were the first ones on the first 2 files. And you can see that the third file was loaded 4 minutes afterwards. Okay. The streaming tables will process every record once, and they will tell us, in this case, when was this record processed. They will only process changes, and they will process every record once. And that's very useful for Data Vault because Data Vault, as you may already know, is an insert-only architecture. Okay. Let me see if we have any more questions. Not for now. If you have any other specific questions, oh yes, there are. Okay, if there are, we can always answer them. Oh, please see Q&A. My apologies. Yes, I will go over the ones. What software are we using? We're using 10.4, which is the latest one. The reason that I'm using 10.4 is because 10.4 has workflows, and the workflows allow me to create the pipeline from this context. Though we didn't discuss this, we can create specific actions with the workflows, and these include creating a pipeline, for example, for my whole data vault, or only for one object. Both those options are possible. You can generate pipelines for one or several objects, or for a whole project, for example. Okay, I'm going to say that this is answered. How do we say this is answered? Done. Why don't satellite rows get updated? The satellites will contain the history, and let's say that you will get a new record every time. This works very well with platforms like Fabric or data lakes, and in this case, Databricks, because the underlying infrastructure are Parquet files, and these Parquet files cannot be updated. So it's very interesting to have architectures that that will work as an insert only. The reality is when you issue an update in these kind of platforms, again, like Fabric, like Databricks or any Parquet file, you are only adding a new Parquet file and changing the metadata, which in this case is the delta log. There is no actual update because the files, again, are immutable, so you cannot update them. Can we have a same as link? Yes, I don't have an example of a same as link here, but you can generate almost any kind of data vault entity, effectivity satellites, pits, bridges, all the business vault. We did not discuss this in this webinar, but we also have PID bridges and satellite views, data marts on top, of course, any other star schema object dimensions, role-playing views, all those things are supported, of course, here. And that includes a same as link. Can a fact be built from a data vault? Yes, we didn't discuss that again, but in this case, I have a presentation layer, which are a dimension, view, which is a type 2. This is also a dimension, I'm going to say type 1 or a normal dimension type on a view, and a fact table, which is also a view, which is basically joining several satellites via the links and generating a view. Usually, Data Vault 2.0 standard suggests that we make a dimensional model or a reporting layer. It doesn't have to be a dimensional model, but always as views. Okay, so of course we will build facts on top of the Data Vault, of the raw vault, or on top of the business vault if we have a business vault. That's your option. So yes, of course. Can you demo a category that changes its satellite column trigger delta? Then after streaming, change it back to the original value. Does this capture the flip-flop of the data? It will capture initially. It will capture a new record. If the data goes back and forth to a new value and to the previous value, you will have those two records on the satellite. The latest record will be considered the current record. So yes, it will capture the flip-flop for sure if it goes back and forth. Yeah, that's something that will happen. If it happens on the source, it will be pushed through the lineage into the satellite, and the satellite will have that, I'm going to say that glitch, but you will have those timestamps. That's why it's important to have a timestamp on every table. But yes, that will be captured. Is there a place to get a free version of the Data Vault 2 specification? If you mean the enablement pack, what we do have are like training environments, and we have like guided tours as well. You can contact us and we will arrange for you a training environment where you can actually make your own Data Vault with a little bit more time, of course, than we have done it today, because today we only modeled one of the tables. But yes, if you get an environment, you can actually play with it around, if that's what you mean, to Michael. And the last one for now says, I assume it works with JSON. If so, how it is automated by the mapping of JSON on the load table in 3D. So both 3D and Red have something we call a parser. The parser will basically, let me see if I can browse it, will basically take a sample, in this case of a JSON file. I'm going to find one for you. And that JSON file will be parsed by the parser. And it will be broken into smaller entities as I will select them now when it decides to load. Hopefully faster. And then once that is exposed, once that metadata is exposed for the JSON, meaning the JSON parents and all those JSON children, then that is exposed in a load table, and the load table will generate the necessary code to ingest and to split or to flatten out the JSON file. Maybe today is not our day in terms of speed. Let me see if we can fix this. Actually, I can open another one. Let's try to open another one, because I already have one of those JSON files loaded, I believe. We go to load tables. Do we have a JSON file? this one, for example. So here, for example, you see my column names is feature geometry coordinates, and on my display name and on my source column, let's say features in this case was the parent, and geometry dot coordinates was the children. Every dot is one level. And if I look at the code generated by the load script, the load script based on that metadata is able to generate a certain level of parsing or flattening out of the JSON. So in this case, it is using this lateral view explode, which is the appropriate syntax for Databricks. This syntax will change for every platform, but this will allow us to flatten out to a certain extent. It will not flatten out infinite levels, but it will flatten out a certain amount of JSON objects. I'm going to try to display it to see if it's populated. It is. Okay, so here, for example, you can see the coordinates, features. You can see that it is the parent. It's always the same. That's what the flattening means. It means I will have columns which are always the same. And here I have each of those records. If I go back to my other red, apparently it's not answering today, or our ADLS. It is the same JSON that I was going to show you on. Let me see if this works. It should work. I'm not sure why it is not browsing right now. Let me see if I have it somewhere else. I'm wondering now, where do we have that JSON? But that JSON file I can show to you here on the. This was, I think, on demo files. I think it was this one. Can we browse it? So this is one of the JSON files. I think the other one was, let me see. It should say on my source, demo files test.json. So it is this one that you're seeing here. This is the JSON file, and the JSON file was parsed by the parser, and these are these geometry points, these coordinates. All these are the children, and let's say red has flattened out all these children and created this nice flat table, which will allow us to, let's say, work more comfortably with it. We have the option of choosing a higher level and flattening out more, or use several children and then join them with. Both options are possible. The next question is the documentation available on how to set up the Wordscape building Data Vault against Databricks and/or Snowflake? Yes, of course. That is included on the enablement packs. The enablement packs have an installation, and that installation will explain how to set up, let's say, this environment. Once that is set up, the process is always the same by modeling in 3D or in red, and then you can generate the data vault. The process to generate it on Databricks or Snowflake is exactly the same. The only difference is the generated code. I think there was another question that said if we were going to get the recording. Yes, you will get the recording from this webinar as well. Another one says, how does dimensions and facts come into play with the data vault? This is what we discussed before. Usually we're talking about a presentation layer which is virtualized, so views on top of the raw vault, which here is called just the data vault, or the business vault if you have a business vault. Okay. Again, if you have other questions, or if you want to see a particular use case, or if you would like to show this to your team, or go over a particular ingestion pipeline or situation, you can always send us an email and we will try to accommodate a customized demo for you. And now, if there are not any more questions, we still have a few minutes. If somebody else has another question.
Doesn't look like there's any more questions, Adika.
Yes, we have one more question. It says,
we do.
It appears you can directly query from an API as well. Can you show how the URL is configured? Yes, so most of our enablement packs can actually browse and load from an API. In this case, I have a very simple API configured. Okay, this is the REST API URL with different methods. You can have get, you can have post. Because every API is slightly different, you can actually modify this window here to accommodate for the particularities of your API. And then based on that, you will launch a script. I hope this one works because the other one wasn't working for unknown reasons. But this will basically make that query on my API and expose, in this case, a JSON file again. And that JSON file will be loaded just like any other flat file. How do you handle multiple business keys for the same entity? Okay, so Data Vault basically says that the business keys will be hashed, and the hashed will actually be the primary key of my tables. Okay, that means that I can push the business key into my hub, but inside my hub, all my business keys will be unique. They will be unique because my hash will also be unique. Okay, that's how we handle multiple business keys for the same entity. All my sources will send my business keys into my same hub. And inside that hub, my business key will be unique regardless of which source it came from first. If that business key comes in again, it will not be inserted again on my hub. So my hub will contain a unique set of records with my business keys. And that is the same. That's business keys from various source systems. They will all be inserted into my hub. I showed you data vault only from one source, but the mechanics of generating it with WordEscape from different sources is exactly the same. Of course, the whole point of a data vault is having different sources, and those sources will send the business keys into the hub, but the hub will only have one unique set of records. Duan says, it might be a bit out of scope, but what are the requirements to set up Red so that the deployment from 3D to Red works out of the box? What settings need to be set to ensure that transition? So basically, to ensure that the deployment from 3D to Red works properly, we need to set up basically that the targets are matching. So Databricks has to go onto a Databricks Red repository, and that my target location descriptors match, so that my load, my stage, and my data vault settings actually match. Then when we deploy those things into Red will actually pick up, here are our windows where we lost before. This is our API window. Again, if I click on OK, it will show me how to parse the JSON. But we will leave this for now. As I was saying, if you configure the locations properly, the code will be generated automatically once we deploy the tables. Another attendee asks, can the API calls be configured with OAuth 2 or only with basic authentication, with any authentication? As I said before, these boxes can be changed, and I could add a box here that says OAuth authentication with any option that I want. Then I would modify the browsing script, and that would take care of that. Do you put all the business keys on the same hub or use same as link? All the business keys will end up on the same hub. That is correct, yes. I think this is roughly it for now. I'm going to go back to our main diagram to go over what we have seen on our architectural diagram. We have seen how to create a connection in 3D and what kinds of connections we can use. Again, ODBC, JDBC, almost anything can be connected to. how to profile and how to keep track of our sources, how to generate a small data vault and generate the intermediate stages. That is done all with the model conversion rules. And then once we deploy that data vault into Wordscape Red, how all that code will be generated with the templates, in this case, notebooks for Databricks to generate streaming tables, and how those notebooks will be uploaded into our Databricks environment, and then how we can create a pipeline and how that pipeline will propagate our changes in the case of a streaming table. We also discussed briefly how to generate the documentation and how the scheduler works. And how the star schema will be created on top with those views or that virtualized dimensional model on top of our data vault. If you have any other questions, or again, if you want to see a particular demo or a particular use case, feel free to contact us and to send us an email.
Thank you so much, Indika. Thank you everyone for joining us. We will be sending out the recording. Please join us for our upcoming webinar on May 1st, from data discovery to deployment, automating star schema modeling in Microsoft Fabric. I put the link in the chat for you all to sign up if you're interested. And thank you, Indika, for a great webinar.
Thank you, Courtney. Everybody have a nice evening.
Thanks. Bye.